Hi, everybody. Welcome back to another session of the PGA Reach podcast. Joining me again, as he always does, is Ron Lucas. Ron is a four-time Patriot Award winner in the section and does some fantastic work with our veterans. And I'm going to turn it over to you, Ron. Welcome back.
Well, thank you again, Bob and David Wright in the Tri-State PGA section for the opportunity. And we're on our third interview here, and a special guest, Jerry Coyne. Jerry Coyne's a retired VA Hines recreational therapist, retired about 3 to 4 years ago, and Jerry and I got to meet back about 10 years ago. And I'll let you know a little bit about our background as Jerry introduces himself, and we can continue on with some positive stuff that the Pittsburgh PGA Hope does for our veterans. Jerry?
Well, thank you, Ron. And I want to thank, the Tri-State PGA and everybody out there for this opportunity. But had a career at the VA 31 years. And I'm a golfer. I caddied as a child and actually made the junior high golf team. Wasn't good enough for the high school team. Played hockey and some other sports. But actually, I went to college, University of Miami, and have a degree in music therapy. So when I was hired by the VA, they already had a full-time music therapist and a part-time music therapist. And I worked there part-time temporary. And the gentleman that hired me said, you really have a lot of sports skills that I don't have with some of the other staff. So I know, you're a musician, a music therapist, and you can do some music, but I would want to utilize you also as a recreation therapist, kind of a hybrid therapist. And I agreed to that. And so I had sports programs and music programs. But we had about 10 years ago, Ron and I met at the VA, and he came up with some other PGA pros and wanted to work with the veterans. And interestingly enough, there was a program at Penn State where they had worked with some wounded warriors, and they were looking to kind of mirror that program. And at Aspinwall, we do not have a lot of young wheelchair veterans that have prosthesis and lost limbs. We've got some other types of veterans. So we really didn't have that population, but I worked at the time with the homeless program, and we were getting veterans back into the workforce. It was a great program. There was a high incidence of substance abuse in that program. I had a lot of veterans that had come back from Iraq, and Afghanistan, had sustained injuries. And as you know, the scenario that we have in our society with painkillers, that these guys had, a lot of pain and got on the painkillers and then, some other substances for addiction. So that we had a lot of those veterans. We were trying to get them back into the job force. And of course, me being in recreation, I had to develop programs. And so we had some nice programs. We had a kayak program. And, I had a fitness program. We had kind of a little jam band. I had some instruments, and the guys would play, do sing-alongs, karaoke, variety of programs. But the golf program just started off. It was great. There was a lot of interest. Throughout the whole time, we had a lot of interest. And many of these veterans had never picked up a golf club before. This was an opportunity for them to play golf. And, I would do some putt-putt, kind of game activities with the veterans, but some of them never swung a club. So it was a great opportunity. And I can't say enough about the dedication of Ron. And then he's got some great surrounding casts, originally Bill Kerp, and then, Jim Kitra. And Ed also, just great pros, great personalities, and working with the veterans. And the one thing that amazed me, because, I've played golf, I've caddied, and I can give some golf tips to people. But when I see Ron or Jim in particular, and Ed, just take a couple minutes and work with someone that either has never hit a golf ball before or has a lot of bad habits, as many of us do with golf, and straighten the swing out. It's really magical in a short period of time to take the swing that they have and put that into a nice golf swing that they can hit the ball, straight, a reasonable distance, so it's really pretty magical. But, the one story that I wanted to think about is that with these homeless veterans, and some of these veterans came from, very low income neighborhoods and that type of thing. Were in the Army. A lot of them, were in war. But when we would go for the lessons at the end of the spring summer session, they would get the opportunity to play a few holes at Nevillewood and Quicksilver, and especially Nevillewood. For these guys to get a chance to get to a country club and see the beautiful grass, play a few holes. I mean, I can't underestimate the experience that they expressed to me. How, because I caddied at a country club. I got to play there on Mondays. I've played at a few country clubs, throughout my life. But for these guys, it was, sacred ground is probably too strong of a statement, but it just how big of an experience that was for them. And then the one year that we were there, we were out and we had finished, and so we went to the van, and a cart came up, and it was Kelly Koch and her friend, and Kelly was a veteran, and she asked about, there's veterans out here, and a member there, and I said, well, yeah, we've got all these gentlemen are veterans here. I'm not a veteran myself. And so she said, well, can I buy you a drink? And I said, well, the way this program is, they test them, that they can't have alcohol or drugs because they're trying to get them back on their feet and, in the workforce. And she said, well, how about if I buy some appetizers? So here we had a van full of these veterans, went and sat, on the patio of Nevillewood, and she ordered all kinds of appetizers, and the guys looked at me like they just couldn't believe it, that here they are, homeless veterans, and they're sitting where, the 1% of our population, the wealthy people in our community are able to, belong to the club and play golf there. And so that was kind of a magical moment, I thought, and especially hearing these veterans, for weeks after tell me, what an experience that was. And then one other experience that we had at that club is that the golf pro there would meet us, and we would go to the practice tee, and he had a gift bag for all the veterans. And it was a really nice Nevillewood golf shirt, a nice windbreaker and a hat and a sleeve of golf balls. And I think the value of that was like roughly $200. And it was just for these guys to get, such nice clothing in addition to the golf from the club was something that, just really touched my heart. The charity that, Nevillewood had for us. So those were two things that kind of just, struck when Ron said, think of a story or two. And I'll tell one story, and then I'll go back to Ron for, some more input. But we had, a lot of the veterans had played some golf. Others never picked up a club. And they had a work program, they called it CWT, Compensated Work Therapy. And some of the veterans would get a job at the VA working as a janitor. It's not a full-time employee. Some of them, if they did well, then they could get a job at the VA, after a period of time. So the fellow's name was Mike, and of course with HIPAA, we're not allowed to use last names, but Mike had told me how much he enjoyed the program, and sure enough, he got back, great success story. He was back in the community, working here at the VA, had saved up, he had a car, and he said, can I show you something? The one day I saw him, he was getting done his shift. It was early afternoon. I was still working through the evening. He goes, I want to show you something. I went to the car. He had a set of golf clubs. He had bought a set of golf clubs and said that he had actually joined a golf league. And I thought, how cool is this that, he said with the program, he got back into golf. He really enjoyed it and actually, bought some clubs and then is working in the community and joined a golf league. And I thought, is that full circle or what? That's a success story, where someone really enjoys a recreation activity. And really in recreation, and it's true in golf or any, it's quality of life. It's we all have to work. We got to pay our taxes and do all that. But what is the joy of life? Is getting involved with golf and different activities. And so I thought that was a nice story I wanted to share.
Yep. And to continue on a little bit about the club at Nevillewood, that was Jim Ankowitz was the PGA golfer.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
And his member, Kelly Koch, was also Patrick Koch's wife. And they've been with us since then, helping us and assisting with different programs and materials and supplies such as the Solar Rider carts. And his company has been helping us put them back together and upgrading and so on. So it's one of those chance meetings that has continued on for many years afterwards. To follow up a little bit too about how Jerry and I met, when it was out at the RMU, the Penn State and what they call SMGA, Salute Military Golfers Association, we had a 2-day seminar over there. And Bill Kerp was the initiator of that. And Bill was mainly focused with the amputees, wheelchair, stroke victims, challenged individuals. And we started it right after we got done with the program, because why get an education if you're not going to have the opportunity to work with the vets? And what we found out was the biggest challenge with wheelchairs and amputees is typically they're not at the VA hospitals at that particular phase of their life. They are at home. And so they had to find their own transportation. They had to get somebody to initiate them to get out of that room of gloom and get motivated to participate in our program. And it started off great, but it didn't follow through because that's their personality, as Jerry knows. So then we got to figure out, well, veterans are veterans and they all need help. And that's when we got to meet Jerry. And that was Ed Vittmeyer and Jim Chikra and also Bill Kerp. And we found that Jerry had the opportunity to have more of a selective audience. He would be consistent with the 8 to 10 approximate vets every week, every session, because they had to be driven in the van. And he was their leader. And unlike some of the other VA recreational therapists or associations, he didn't care about working overtime. Jerry puts forth 110% even after retiring. He goes out there and he makes sure that they would get to us every week in the spring program with RMU in the fall, and then also with the PGA Hope that we developed from that, and the Adapt Military Golfers Association and Adaptive Golf with David Windsor. So Jerry's been a very strong supporter even after retirement. And the music that he has for vets doesn't even just stop at the VA hospitals. When we are working with American Legion, when we're working with our PGA Hope, I invited him a couple years ago to be the finale. And he and his veteran groups came out, and boy, what a special moment that was. How about it, Jerry?
Well, you know what? Thank you, Ron. I appreciate that. And, it really is nice, and I'm really humbled. When I worked at the VA, I met a Vietnam veteran on a gig. He was in the other band, and that's Dan Schlegel. And kind of a funny story, it was the Voodoo Lounge was a biker bar down in the Strip District, and the one band that I was playing with years ago, was hired to play open up, and they had a flatbed. And so we played, on the flatbed, and there were all these bikers everywhere. And the thing is, I have a lot of friends that have Harleys, but they had a competition. All these bikes were the ones that had the nice paint jobs, and they had the chrome all over them. And I mean, my one buddy in the band had a Harley, and he said, these bikes are $75,000 or more, and I guess they call them chopped, right? They do the custom work, and it's all the chrome and everything. And there were bikers. I mean, I've never seen this many of this type of bikes in my life, because they had a big competition. They had trophies. And just an interesting side note is I know women ride motorcycles, but they had couples, his and her, bikes they're both the chrome and the paint jobs. And I'm thinking that's $150,000 just there, or $200,000 just between the two bikes. But anyway, I met Danny Schlegel on that gig. And when I was at the VA, I had an outpatient gym program. And this was actually at Highland Drive. And he came up, he was using the pool as an outpatient. And I said, you're that bass player that was in the other band. And so we started talking. And he said, could I volunteer with music? And I said, great. So he started coming in and volunteering and playing music. And I would either play keyboard and sing, and he would play guitar. Or sometimes I would play drums and he would play bass, and we would get some other musicians. So this all started, over many years. I played with him. So when I retired, I thought, these volunteers, these musicians have volunteered to play music for our veterans. How can I not volunteer and play music? At this point, I've been very fortunate, had a nice career. I just missed Vietnam. I'm 65, so I had a draft number, but they had stopped the draft. I had two roommates in college that were back from Vietnam on the GI Bill. And I think both of them had some PTSD. At that time, they had not identified post-traumatic stress. So, I just thought, I've got to get involved and try to give back. So now I have another Vietnam veteran that's a neighbor, and we just gave him a cowbell. John Haldigan, we call him Colonel Cowbell. And when we go to the adult day healthcare and volunteer and play music there, we also have Tony Sciota. Scioti is playing a drum. And then, Ron, what's Larry's last name?
Larry Gamrett is with us now, and it's all because of the PGA Hope and the introduction to Jerry and his group.
Because he's playing a drum too, and Larry has the use of one arm, and he uses that arm to play a drum with us. So they're all Vietnam veterans, and I just feel so fortunate. I'm not one, but to have all these veterans, a little volunteer band playing for the other, the other veterans there at the adult day healthcare. So it's just, like I say, it's very rewarding. Of course, we're shut down now with, the restrictions with the virus, but we do that like once a month. And then we do that, and then the same veterans will come out and play for Ron for the finale for his PGA Hope, and then, of course, the fundraiser. So just very, very rewarding to be able to play with other veterans for veterans.
Yeah, and speaking of Larry and Tony, they're members of the American Legion.
Yes, and they are. The members are also,
They are really enjoying the opportunity. They were always looking to maybe give something back and be a part of what you have with your group. And because of the chance opportunity back to the game of golf, here we are talking about 2 more editions of the Vietnam vets, but now they're not just playing golf. They are part of your music group that goes to the hospitals and rewarding for everyone. Speaking of VA hospitals, it was a perfect segue that our second interview with Chris Veach over at the Southwest Veterans Center spoke about how we got together, and it was through you, Jerry, and that, he brought the wheelchair individuals, the more amputees or more severely injured. And so now we have a compliment from you and what you did with the VA Hines Hospital and those drug, alcohol rehabs, the homeless style of veteran. And now we have the compliment with Chris and the Southwest Veterans Center. And what a great, building blocks for what we do and how we do things.
And your numbers are great, Ron. I mean, it's a wonderful program. And, whenever I go out there to the finale, I don't know what, but the room is filled. Between the state veterans home and the Aspinwall VA, I think your numbers, aren't they among the best in the country with these programs?
Well, I would like to think so. Larger is nice to a point, but then you can't accommodate the instruction. You have the facilities, you have the time constraints and other things. But I can tell you that when we started with the RMU and you with bringing the vets, and Bill and I with the trying to do things independently without the VA support, I can tell you that we started about 8 or 10. What we have last year at the end of the finale of the PGA Hope, as well as the fall RMU, we were up to 24, 26.
Beautiful.
Yes,
Beautiful.
and then we invite everybody to bring their family members if they have such. And that's where we fill the room up. I think we were up to 50 or 60 participants.
Yes.
Enjoying the golf at the Woodlands. And I can tell you, finally, that I think that we have the best in the country of the facilities to work with the vets. You have the RMU Dome, you have Scallies, and then you have the Woodlands Foundation, which is perfect for what we have for our needs. And the country clubs that we talked about was Quicksilver, Sewickley Heights, and the club at Nevillewood, and that was through Kelly Koch and such. So, you talk about a compliment. Talk about a great, opportunity in the city of Pittsburgh. What we have, I think we have one rare.
Well, it's true, and you think about with the veterans that I work with, and I was telling them, Quicksilver, the seniors, they used to have an event there. That's a championship course. It's a difficult course. It's a great layout. At Nevillewood, Mario Lemieux used to have his celebrity golf outing there, and then Sewickley Heights is a beautiful course, and the local pros, I believe, have their tournaments, some of their tournaments there. So, just the quality of the courses are amazing, and then the Woodlands is just so great to adapt for these veterans that are in the wheelchairs. You can't take them out to Nevillewood, and they're be on the cart path. They get off. They can't be in a sand trap or something. So, here you've got the Woodlands that is just designed, for a wheelchair person, and it's wonderful.
Yeah,
really
the invite is still there from those facilities, those country clubs. But since we have grown, and since Chris Veach in the Southwest Veterans Center has added with the wheelchairs, it's logistically impossible for us to continue that part.
And the thing is too, but what you're doing is you're over doubling the number of veterans that you're reaching to, and I think it's great. Like I said, the wheelchair veterans, the impaired veterans, ones that with a walker, physically impaired, for them to be able to play golf, it's just great. What a wonderful thing.
Absolutely. So I think that, Bob, we're pretty close to being about calling it an interview. I got to tell you that I think it was very rewarding. And as I told you before, Jerry has no problems with stories. The biggest one is getting that hook and pulling them off the stage.
Yeah, between golf and music, there's been it's been a fun life, and there's been some great stories. Matter of fact, finish with a quick story. When I was caddying as a kid, I was not in this group, but there was a golfer that was so upset with his poor golf that over at Wildwood Country Club, he said to the caddy, "Give me that bag." And he took the bag and he threw it in the lake, number 12. And then he realized that his locker key and car keys were in the bag. So he paid the caddy to jump in to retrieve the bag, and he got the keys out, and he threw the bag back in and stormed off the course.
I said, you know, golfers could really have a series of shows, comedies for sure, without any writers, just having those stories sent in. And there's so many numerous ones, and all true.
Yeah, that's no doubt about it. You know, it's a humbling game. It is very humbling, and so there are some great stories out there. But thank you so much. You know, really enjoyed this, and the whole thing. I can't say enough with, you know, Ron. I mean, look at the awards he's gotten. I mean, his dedication to veterans is amazing. And then you know, he's a PGA golf pro, and you know, all the credentials and club maker and all that, and a whole life of, you know, experience of golf, and bringing that to our veterans. It's really a nice thing.
And don't forget, Jerry, I'm the head of the committee.
Yes, you are. And that's what, if John Holdigan were here, he'd ask me if I was in uniform, but I'm not. I'm not. You know, you don't have to look at me. You should see. I'm 4 weeks beyond a haircut. My wife is threatening to trim my hair, which I don't care. I don't mind. But you should see. I'm not even shaving now. I'm just, you know, just kind of letting it go.
Well, get your chopper and take a ride.
There you go. That's it. Okay. Thank you so much.
Jerry, thank you so much for sharing some of those stories. It's amazing to look at how golf can bring so many different people together, and I appreciate you taking the time with us today. What a great opportunity, and some great stories you were able to share with everyone.
Well, thank you so much. Thanks for your time and what you're doing here.
All right, Jerry, take care.
Okay, we'll see you. Bye now.